okay? Because nobody really is raised and nobody is born already having a hatred towards another group of people. They're kind of taught that. They might be taught that inadvertently. History, for example. You have Black History Month 1 month out of the year. You may not talk about Native Americans very much. There's no way that you guys should be from Oklahoma and you don't know that Oklahoma means land of the red man. Okay? There's no way that that should be like that. You guys should already know that. That's part of the reason I'm here. Okay? So, with that said, just know it's okay to identify one another by your differences. The only time it becomes a problem is when you treat somebody differently, negatively, or badly because of their differences. You understand? But we have to embrace our differences. We have to learn about one another, the truth about one another. We can't just listen to what the television is saying or what YouTube is saying about a certain group of people. You got to see for yourself. Okay? So, the reason I'm saying all of this is because this is the reason that Tatum even exists. And when I say Tatum's was a historically all-black town, okay, I don't want you guys to get that confused with people that were not black were not allowed in Tatum's, okay? So I'll explain to you that, and I'll explain to you the reason why Tatum's was a historically all-black town, all right? Any questions? No questions right now? Okay. Oklahoma. Raise your hand if you know what a boomer is. Raise your hand if you ever heard of boomer. Boomer Sooners. The Boomers and the Sooners. It's pretty popular, right? It's a big deal, right? In Oklahoma. Our football team. You shaking your head no? You don't like the Sooners?
Nope.
That's cool. You don't gotta like the Sooners. What you like? The OSU Cowboys?
Nope.
Who you like? The Thunder?
Nope.
Who you like? The Longhorns?
Yeah, baby.
Oh, so you're not from Oklahoma?
I'm from here, though.
Oh,
I live in Texas.
oh, he's from here, but he don't want to represent the home turf, huh, guys? Okay. Well, better luck next time when OU plays the Texas Longhorns. You know, because I mean, most of the time we win that matchup. In case you didn't know. Just in case you didn't know. Okay, so Boomers and Sooners. Raise your hand if you have ever heard of the land runs. Land runs? Nobody? But you heard of Boomer Sooner, right? So nobody knows what Boomer Sooner means?
I know what sooner means.
What does Sooner mean?
It means like somebody that came on to the land. But we know now in Oklahoma, the land,
Excuse me.
they
Can you get
came there
Can you pass that to him back there? Not to cut you off or anything. But you're right. They came here early, okay? So the land run, all right? Back in the day, there was a time when one of the most important things, and it's kind of the same way today, one of the most important things to have was to own some land, okay? The reason why is because before they had planes, trains, automobiles, TVs, air conditioners, people's main priority was to grow them some food, okay? Grow them some food. Who eats tomatoes, lettuce, anything that grows in the ground, okay? The whole produce section at the grocery store. There didn't used to be grocery stores. You ever thought about that? And somebody said yeah, a lot of people said no. So if there wasn't grocery stores, where do people get their food from? They grew it. So it's very important to have land, okay? So it was at one point in time, raise your hand if you heard of the 13 colonies. Okay, 13 colonies. And then what happened? Westward expansion, right? They wanted to move west. So the further they got west, the more they got to territory that was not necessarily claimed by the United States, by the 13 colonies. They grew to 14, 15, 16, and these grew to 50 states eventually. Well, this piece of area, which is now Oklahoma, I want to be careful. I want to say nobody was living there, but That's not correct. Native Americans were living there, but nobody who was European or that represented the 13 colonies lived there, okay? And so this was uncharted territory, all right? So when they removed the Native Americans, they picked a piece of land to send them to, which was Oklahoma territory and Indian territory, and they said, well, okay, this land is not so important. We'll send them there. But they were wrong. The land turned out to be very important. So before you know it, lots of people wanted to go to this place. And so we ended up having land runs. Those lands were set aside for the Native Americans, but people who were not Native Americans became interested in getting some of the land too, all right? Because maybe their situation where they were living wasn't so good. Maybe they didn't have good land to grow crops. You know, a lot of people had economic hardships back then. They didn't have a lot of money. And so if we hear that there's free land somewhere, we're probably going to pack up and try to go there, right? So they had the land runs. The land runs, the people that participated were boomers and sooners. So that's where that comes from. If I holler boomer at an OU game, what is everybody going to holler back?
Sooners.
But nobody in here knows what that means. That's a shame. I mean, it's not y'all's fault. Okay? But this is why I'm here. Okay? Because this is your identity. If you are from Oklahoma, this is your identity whether you know it or not. All right? This is what you come from. So, land ownership was the key to surviving because we had to grow everything. Okay? So, when the 5 civilized tribes came here, a lot of people don't know that the 5 civilized tribes, they had slaves too. Okay? Not only Europeans or white people owned slaves. Indian people did too. Okay? And when they were removed from their homeland and forced to travel on that Trail of Tears, they brought a lot of slaves with them. Okay? So moving forward, once Oklahoma began to organize as a state and slavery was over and abolished, the federal government said, hey, you 5 civilized tribes, all of your slaves, you need to give them rights. At that point, African Americans or black people of the tribes, they got their first opportunity to own their own towns, okay? To be a governor or run, not a governor, but be a mayor of a town or a judge, okay? So this is how Tatum's and the other black towns came into existence, okay? Tatum's is the closest black town to Lawton. It's just on the other side of Duncan. If you've ever been to Duncan, it's less than an hour from here. It's about 56 miles, okay? So I was fortunate and lucky enough for my family to be from Tatum's, but to attend public school in Lawton. So I grew up in 2 places, all right? So the thing about Tatum's, we all know that black people face hard racism, right?
Yeah.
Very tough racism, okay? So Tatum's, as well as about 70 other black towns, more than any other state. Tatum's was a safe haven for African Americans. When I say Tatum's was historically all black, it's not because they wanted to separate themselves from everybody and be bougie. You know what I mean? But it's the fact that they couldn't go into other communities, Indian communities or white communities, and be treated fairly. So they had to organize as a group just like you guys, and they had to fend for themselves, all right? That means they had to establish schools. The government didn't give them any money for education, and education is super important. You guys know about, you know about the teacher walkout last year, or the strike, or issues with the education, right? Education is always going to be important. So these black towns built their own schools. They had grocery stores. They had motor car garages. They basically established everything that they need for themselves so that nobody would have to leave the community and face the reality of maybe being lynched. Raise your hand if you ever heard of a lynching. What's a lynching?
Like, it's like whenever somebody, I can't remember, but I did it on my essay.
On your essay? So a lynching is basically when somebody is brutalized, most of the time murdered, hung from a tree, a noose,